So our son Dashiell, 17 years old, high school student in Colony, New York. Oh, I can't give away too many personal details. You've already learned enough to identify us and take away everything we have. I wish you wouldn't. I was saying that it has long been my mental construct of how I would explain my son if I were giving a TED talk, to show a picture and say that the most salient thing about him is not his diagnosis. Do you have a reaction to that construct?
Oh, I agree. I agree that it's just a part of who he is. It doesn't define him, and that
Connected to, but not the most compelling element, I think.
right. That he happens to have Down syndrome, but that he is very, and you could argue, that are some of those qualities related to him having Down syndrome, but also that they're just part of who he is, and yet, like, you don't know what he would have been without Down syndrome, but that it's just a part of him, that it doesn't define him, that he's not always happy, that he, sort of the cliches that they say about people with Down syndrome is, it can be reductive too.
Is he capable of being a cranky teenager?
Absolutely.
100%.
Yeah, and as he should be, right? I mean, why should he not have that experience? That sometimes that those phases or stages can come later at different times, than a typical teenager, which, what's a typical teenager? That's
So he was late to get cranky. He was late to get braces. He was late to get his first teeth at the beginning, but did all those things in the same way as any other kid would do those things. Here's a thing about him that I find that I guess surprised me. So the introduction to Dashiell, who everybody calls Dash except us because I love that name so much in its fullness, the introduction to him of the idea that he has Down syndrome, I'm going to say that was sort of our version of the talk that parents dread having with their kids about where babies come from. We didn't rush it. And it sort of came on naturally. I mean, I didn't rush anything. If anybody ever had a formal, this is the truth about you, you would have been the one to do that. But he doesn't seem to be bothered by it.
No. I mean, he almost sees it as a superpower kind of thing, like there was a particular book that I got that explained it and, had pictures and, talked about chromosomes, and he loves science, so I think he liked that. And over time we sort of hit on it. We families that talk about it more. I think that they talk about it more because there's other kids, and that it becomes something that they have to address, from day one.
So you mean families who have a child with Down syndrome?
Yes.
And how they address having that conversation.
Exactly, because if you have other children, it becomes, necessary to talk about it with the other children. And with our Dashiell being an only child, we didn't tend to do that. And I think also just I never saw it as this thing defines you,
well, and we didn't know anything about it or what to expect at the beginning. So I recall that, so during your pregnancy, they do some tests that are normal tests that they do on everybody that are with the ultrasound. And then because maybe there was something they wanted to get a closer look at, they said, do a higher level ultrasound. And that higher level ultrasound would have shown some physical characteristics while Dashiell was in the womb that might be markers of a Down syndrome diagnosis, but they were all borderline Describe that
Right.
part of it.
So so they do an initial screening, and some of the very first screening they do is, I think it's called the nuchal fold, and so there were some things that he didn't have, right? So he didn't have that, but then
And they're looking with more attention at 4 signs of Down syndrome with an older
Yes.
pregnant woman for the first time.
right.
You were 41 during your pregnancy.
I think I was 42 the whole.
Oh, were you?
42.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
42.
for the
So I was
doctors, alarm bells.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I was advanced maternal age, and so there are just more tests that they do. Had a initial screening, which was positive for a chance of Down syndrome.
But not certain yet.
Right. So then they do more advanced ultrasounds, which, yes, that had, there were measurements. They can measure
Ratios.
ratios of bones, and so he was borderline on those things. That so there were some markers, and then there were other markers that were absent, and so I did have multiple advanced ultrasounds. They suggest very strongly to get an amnio, that's the only way to confirm.
Which involves, for those who don't know, a massive needle going into your belly, into essentially to get a sample of is it blood from the baby or just from the placenta?
Fluid,
or amniotic fluid.
Yeah, the fluid.
So they can test from
the fluid. Yeah,
okay.
They're not trying to hit the baby. They're trying to avoid the baby.
Yes.
But yes, they want the fluid. But which was
I don't know why I'm thinking that game at the carnival where you pop balloons. That would be wrong. That would be not the right test. But they want you to take the amnio so that you can be certain whether or not it is a Down syndrome diagnosis within a deadline, so that
whether you want to continue your pregnancy or not. Yeah.
The medical community, it seems to me, in an effort to avoid people coming back later and being mad at them and possibly litigating because you didn't give us this information in time to abort the baby, the medical profession really wants to make sure you have this information in a time when you are still legally, constitutionally entitled to an abortion. Or once upon a time, you were constitutionally entitled. That's no longer the same everywhere. How did that feel, the sort of sense of make sure you have this test and it's very invasive, we're going to stick a spike in your gut soon, you got to take that soon.
Yeah, I don't think in the moment at the time that I fully understood the dynamics that were happening. I knew that I felt rushed. I knew that they really wanted me to go ahead with that. They were like, oh, well, just, make the appointment and you can always change it. So I did, and
took the first out.
Yeah, and then.
But then the deadline approaches.
And so the day before the appointment that I was supposed to have, I just had, a medical event at work. After lunch, I just was very. Very uncomfortable, very, I thought something was wrong. I was in distress. And I worked for a hospital, but I would have had to walk across the street and up a flight of stairs to get to the emergency room. And I didn't think I could do that. And they wouldn't let somebody drive me over there. So they had to call an ambulance to drive me for 2 blocks over to go into the emergency room area
for what was nausea, but cranked up enough.
Yeah, like a massive case of nausea. So I got admitted, and there was a whole thing.
Yeah. So the day before the scheduled amnio that you kind of got to get, you got sick to your stomach.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then the next day, when I get to the appointment and I tell her that this happened. Was sort of the first time that she said, well, why are you here? What do what would you do with the information? And I said, I'm here because everybody is making me feel pressured to be here. I'm not going to do anything with the information. I don't, it makes no difference to me. I'm not going to change anything. And then.
Why is that?
Because I felt like I was meant to have this child, that it wasn't, I was 42, that the circumstances that, that there was no do-over.
This was
no,
your shot?
Yeah, yes, exactly.
What does Eminem say? You only got one shot. You got to, etc.
Daschle could sing it if we were here.
He could.
Yeah.
And that person who asked, "Why are you here? What are you going to do with the information?" was a nurse.
No, that was the doctor.
That was the
The doctor that was going to do the procedure, and she was the first person that asked me that.
I was just going to say, yeah.
And as soon as
totally different listening. Who are you? How do you feel?
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
So, and as soon as I said that, she was like, "Well, then,
don't take the stupid test."
And I just remember being like, "Oh!" And I was like so relieved I couldn't get out of there fast enough. And yeah, I never thought about it again. I was happy.
So after that, because I feel like it was before he was born that you started researching and looking up more about Down syndrome, and particularly, I feel like you read a lot of stories of mothers who had a child with Down syndrome. Describe that. What did you, what ideas, what comfort, what did you get from that looking into?
I don't know that I read those beforehand a lot. I think that while I was pregnant, I was very focused on, I had my Lamaze book, my book about, the actual process and that your body is made for this. And, because of going to doctors who just stressed that I was older and that was going to, all the ways in which it was going to be difficult. And so I was very, I took great comfort in reading and rereading that our bodies are made for this, and that, that it's a natural process, and that, to not worry so much.
And we were sort of in limbo on the Down syndrome diagnosis before birth, because not having gotten the amnio, which was the only thing that could definitively establish a diagnosis one way or the other, many of the other clues were borderline, and so we didn't plan for it,
right?
Because it was uncertain, and we dwelt in that uncertainty.
Right. Yeah. People just said, they'll be able to tell when he's born. And even that wasn't true. Like, there was question, there was uncertainty for,
a couple of days.
Yeah. It was that first week, they had to do a blood test and send it out.
But I feel like the doctor did say on that day, we're pretty sure that he has Down syndrome. I feel like he felt, or was it Clarissa?
That
for some reason I thought somebody there.
There were mixed messages, because the hospital that we went to was not our regular doctor. There was a hospital doctor who couldn't tell, who basically said they didn't know. I took him to the practice that first couple of days, and that first doctor said, "I don't think he has it." I remember this differently. And and they had taken blood at the hospital, and so that was all in process at that point. But there was uncertainty because he didn't maybe have some of the classic visual markers, features, and so yes, I remember it being unknown for it was probably a week before we got the results of that karyotype test back.
How long did it take me to convince you of the name Daschle?
He was unnamed for 24 hours in the hospital. There were two names, and then
I had been pushing.
You had been pushing hard on, and I was uncertain, and I felt that I wasn't going to be rushed. I needed to see him.
And you needed to research the background and the meaning.
I did, yes.
And what finally persuaded you that the name Daschle, which I just love because Dashiell Hammett, a great mystery writer, I just always loved that name. And it turns out to have been a family name for him when you looked it up, because you struggled to find a meaning you could.
So, there's a classic English meaning that is page boy, and when I saw him, I was like, page boy, So I wasn't that excited about the page boy, but then I found a I don't know if mystical, just an alternate translation of heaven, a French translation, and that is what sold me.
Took you over the line.
Yeah.
The modern
Yes.
French would be du ciel, from the sky.
Yeah.
And so Dashiell, the way they said it back when that name was created has now changed into what is modern French, but from the sky, from heaven, was what
Yes.
nudged you over the line. I just thought it
That's
was
what-
cool.
yeah.
I always thought it was a cool name.
Well, that's what got it on the list, and so then we still went to the hospital with 2 names on the list,
And
I
I'm-
wanted to see.
I'm going to get this door down and we're going to get in there. And
So yeah, I think at some point he was unnamed, and then at some point the name Dashiell just came out, and you perked right up. And you're like,
you
yeah.
said it.
I said it first, but yeah, you.
So he's got a great name, and all the kids love calling him Dash. Everybody calls him Dash. He calls himself Dash. I still always say Dashiell because I love it. I just think it's a beautiful name. So after he's born, and we do get the results, now we're in exactly the same way as all parents are, days of, hey, this first baby is now in your house. Now what are you going to do? Is that when you started reading books of stories?
Yes, yes. So then most, I hope most areas. I certainly locally we have a vibrant Down syndrome community, and they have welcome baskets. You get some information, and they connect you with resources. And I believe that this book, was part of that. That initial contact, and there were also lovely families that invited us over.
Yes.
Just to, it's a very welcoming community. Very often the diagnosis is a complete surprise to the parents and can really shake them.
And many of them are younger than we were.
Yes, and that was not our circumstances. I mean, we didn't know for certain, but we knew it was a possibility. So we weren't, we weren't
stunned,
taken
we weren't
by
devastated,
surprise. Right.
But it was newer information than we had.
Right. I mean, now you have the accurate information, but it wasn't a complete surprise, right? So it wasn't that we weren't completely taken off guard by it. And I think that for a younger mother that hasn't had any of those testings or didn't have markers, that it can be a devastating diagnosis, and that's what a lot of the stories that I remember reading were.
Because those families, those mothers, I think are mostly the ones writing them, are grieving. And what they're grieving is the loss of something that they expected, something they wanted, something that didn't exist yet, but all of the plans and memories and ideas and excitement about having a new baby that they presumed would be a typical baby, now they learn that to whatever degree the diagnosis changes what their expectations of of what they wanted, of what they looked forward to, of what they imagined and dreamed, that amount goes away. And the reality of, well, now we have to figure out what to do with this baby with this condition.
Right. Yeah, and it is. There's a lot of old information on the internet. There's unfortunately like medical professionals that will give you old information or, just unkind and information that they just are that
They don't know better.
They don't. It's not that they're trying to to be mean, but there's and this was 20 years ago about that it's getting better, but there was still misinformation or lowered expectations or so it's a lot. It's a lot to take all that in, and,
so you read these stories from other mothers who started devastated, and then this is why they get put into a book with other stories. Then they come to their moment of acceptance summarize the basic arc of those stories.
That they started out devastated, and then I think it's a process. It's a process for every parent, and that coming to the realization that just because this is going to be a different journey doesn't mean that it's going to be less, right? That it's that. And
Well, I think in many cases they would describe it as having they've discovered, they've stumbled upon that it's much more than what their expectations
that
had
it's
been when they got the diagnosis.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, and I don't know that transformation happens quite so quickly. I think that's a transformation that happens over time, but that maybe it sounds cliche, but that ultimately it's a gift, but that it's a different journey, but that it is, it's a great journey, right? It's that you become less attached to, what you thought it was going to be, and you realize that,
what it is,
is great. Yeah. I mean, when early, we had hosted groups early on, and one of the early observations we made was just how fantastic, like the kids and the families were, that, because there's things that you'll read that'll be like, oh, this is going to be hard on your, on the other kids in your family, or that was a reason why, people were put in institutions years ago, and the reality is that these kids were fantastic, that they learned, compassion, that they learned, that they see how hard their siblings work to do, some of the same things, and that they're very compassionate and empathetic,
and they come by it naturally.
Exactly, because it's just
they were already, as kids, available to feel that sense of inclusion and compassion. And those sibling kids were just all great. They were just so kind and respectful and compassionate and understanding. And so you were, at the beginning of our association, much more spiritual and airy-fairy and connected to things that have only recently become more plausible to me on my journey. But a story or a narrative that has to have come from you early on was this idea that when souls choose to come to be embodied in this lifetime, they have different missions, and that these people who, by the standards of our world, of our material world, and what everybody's trying to achieve in the material world, seem disadvantaged, seem like they need help, but that you said that those souls had come here to be teachers.
Yeah, that potentially that they are the more evolved soul, and that they chose this physical embodiment that appears to be a challenge, to most of us, because they are more evolved and they have come here to teach us. Yeah,
to teach us.
Yes,
that's a big number to wrap your head around. As the adult who assumes that I have worked so hard to become competent so that I could take care of this other being, and I have no idea what I'm doing. And the idea that they would be here to teach me is a lot to chew on. I barely remember back to that process. I feel like it has been unconscious for me, that the lessons that I have learned from my son, I think I'm still waking up to. But I feel like when you were reading those stories of other parents going through this experience, that we got sick of them at a certain point. It's just like, oh my God, they all start with, I was devastated. They all start with, it was the most horrible thing that could happen to me. There were few and far between stories that deviated from that. That was, a common theme. And it was because, I didn't relate to that story. Like I respect that is their story, but it wasn't. Why not?
My
What's the
story.
difference?
Because I was 42, because I had thought that I was never going to have children. And that, that hear this
miracle, is that the word you're looking for?
You could, I suppose you could say that these circumstances came together, and it was a surprise, and a wonderful surprise, and that I very much felt like it was meant to happen, you know, that it was meant to be, that, and specifically that this was the child that we were meant to have.
Many elements combined to seem entirely implausible, and yet, on reflection, feels like it came to us for a reason.
Yes, and again, in the moment, you're just, you are changing diapers, and there's an element of the, having a child is, you have a child to care for, and there's just basics of that are there regardless of a diagnosis or not, but that in the taking in information and just having some time to sit with it and and processing it is how you then start to formulate of, this is how this experience is different for me, or this is how come I don't relate to it, or and even just thinking back about things during the pregnancy, like not really in the moment, not quite understanding why everybody was such a hurry about the amnio and that kind of thing. And then later, after doing more reading and, hearing statistic, then kind of sinking in of,
and actually encountering people who would not have made the same choice that we made, which seemed inevitable to us. It seemed like, well, no, you're not going to not have this baby. And, you already made, one decision that got you to this place, and it is somewhat cheapening how life works to then decide, okay, I'm going to run away from that decision. And I have always described our strategy in raising this child as being one of, we're just going to wait and watch and let him show us what he is capable of doing, what he can do. And where has that gotten us?
He can do anything that he sets his mind to, right? He can, he can do hard things. Our kids can do hard things, and I think that that can be overlooked, or that.
Well, all those people at the beginning making the argument that, you better figure out if you don't want this kid in a hurry. We're proceeding from a place of, I'll give them credit for having met families in this circumstance before, maybe some one or few, and that the medical professionals have to have witnessed families in that devastation part of the journey and decided, well, this isn't an experience that I, having taken the Hippocratic oath to do no harm, would wish upon a family. So I need to give you the opportunity to avoid that devastation, right? I feel like that's where the medical advice is coming from, because it certainly is coming from a place of not deeply experienced the value of an individual with Down syndrome. It's starting from a presumption that my patient, the mother, her life would be better without this child. And that is risky ground for a medical professional to tread. And it is, I'm going to say, 100% based on not enough information, not knowing the subject, not knowing this community, these families, these individuals enough to agree that they have value. Right? Otherwise, their medical advice would not be, hey, you better figure out if you want to get rid of it. So our son is going to graduate high school in 5 months. In New York State, he's going to get a Regents diploma, which is a high bar. There's a lot of tests you have to take. He is, I think it's fair to say, if there's a spectrum of capabilities among people who have Down syndrome, that he's at the high end of what he can accomplish academically, but he also has had enormous support getting there, right? The ability was there. The ability to pilot himself to do all the work that's necessary to master this material was not immediately evident, and so much of that is coming from your working with him the whole way along, and some great school teams. How would you? I mean, now we're at the end of a 13-year public school journey, and summarize how that has gone.
I mean, it's going great to the degree. Like he's going to graduate in a couple of months. He's going to graduate on time, and that it's it's a process. It's that it can be intimidating at times. It can test you as a parent, and
every year because of his diagnosis, the department in each school that has responsibility for Daschle is the special education department. And so every year in New York State, the parents and the team from the school have to negotiate a document that's 20 or 30 pages. That's the individualized education plan. So every year we would, in the spring, go in and have meetings with the administrators about what that plan should look like. That was super easy and didn't take any work on your part, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's a process. It's a job, right? I mean, that can be overwhelming for some parents. I mean, it was a learning process. But yes, there's a team. Your child receives services through school and extra support. So it becomes a process, and it's a new language, to learn of how to negotiate that. I mean, I came from a working environment and, thought I was used to managing those things. But it's a whole new world that you're in. And
the administrators are managing a budget, and these extra services that these students that need special education require cost money, and they're figuring out their budget. And you as a parent are advocating for one individual, one student, for your child.
Right.
And they are too,
right.
But they're bringing other elements that might argue in favor of reducing services. And so this negotiation took place every single year.
Yes. And different school districts handle it differently. I will say that over, we've been in the same district for Daschle's education, and I appreciate and I'm grateful that his district has always been willing to have the conversation that you always felt listened to. That we didn't always necessarily agree, but that we could always have a conversation, and that.
And we did have a seat at the table.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, yes, and I think that for.
And probably we were different than most parents of kids who have IEPs, who also have to go through the same process, which means the administrators are just, there's 2 months where they have to have meetings with every kid who is in the special ed department and has an IEP. And it's a lot of paperwork. It's a lot of administration. But we came in, poured through books. You ever seen pictures of like some kid in graduate school at a table in the library, and there's books stacked up to here, and it's 11 at night, and they're still reading because they've got a quiz tomorrow. That was you.
I like to feel prepared.
Yes, you do. Did you ever feel satisfactorily prepared, that you had all your ducks in a row?
Well, I mean, probably tending to be a perfectionist, but no, you never feel 100% prepared, exactly. Right? I mean, you do the best you can, and I feel like over time I got better at it and more comfortable with how I was doing it. But yeah, it is. It's.
And compared to other parents, the amount of preparation you did ahead of time, the administrators did not know what to do with you.
No, I mean, I was probably a bit much for them at times, and I'm sorry for that, but I'm not sorry. You know what I mean? I'm sorry if I wasn't, as polite as I could have been, but I always tried to assert myself, but
I feel a Willie Nelson song coming on.
In as polite a way as I could.
Could have been more respectful. You didn't have the ways I should have.
But
no.
But yeah, and I think that, like, I appreciated that, again, even when we didn't agree, that people were able to see that, you're advocating for your child, and I would do the same, right? You advocate as
we heard that
kindly and respectfully as you can, and
and they negotiate.
Right, exactly.
There's compromise.
Exactly. And that that I knew I was very well versed in our son's strengths and weaknesses and the learning strategies that worked for him, and
what you did at home with him, and what
Yes.
kind of help you wanted the teachers to send back so that you could do that work at this table.
Right. And that's it. I think, that you're part of the team, and that I think some parents don't feel comfortable, don't feel welcome on the team, and that.
They feel overwhelmed by the professionality of the administrators and the teachers saying,
Right.
well, this is how we do it because I've got data.
Right.
Sometimes forgetting that the I in IEP stands for individualized.
Right.
So whatever the
Right.
data is, the best thing for this kid is going to be, and only the parents can take that,
Right.
are in a position to advocate that. And a lot of parents do not advocate to the degree that they are allowed to, because they don't know, or they're intimidated.
Because it is. It can be an overwhelming task.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is. I lost my thought. It's an individual plan for your child, and that you are, as a parent, part of the team. And so that might mean, that means, okay, this is what you saw at school, this is what I saw at home, and, how can we, if that's inconsistent, then why, or
How can
let's
we work
be
better
consistent.
together?
Exactly. And yeah, that we've had, many teams and teachers over the years that maybe that's not the natural way that they're accustomed to working, but that sort of once they saw that, hey, this mom
Works.
is engaged, and
And
yeah,
these tools work for this student.
exactly, and
look
that's
what
it.
this
The
student
proof
is
was
capable
always
of doing.
that Dashiell, was able to do the work, and that.
And I would say 90+% of the teachers that he has had all through have been cooperative and have had his best interest at
Yes.
heart, and have not resisted our input to what the teacher side of it can provide to us, so that we can reinforce what he's learning in that class. It's been, for the most part, a terrific team effort to get him here. But
And I know what I was going to say is that when you think about it, that the parents are the only people on the team from start to finish. Now that
That's
we're
right.
wrapping this up, there have been many, therapists and teachers and administrators that have come and gone, and that we're the only ones that are still here, and we're the ones that carry it forward, for whatever happens afterward. And so that, as a parent, don't be afraid to point that out, right? That sometimes in the meetings, if you feel overwhelmed or you feel like you're not being heard, you're the one that's here for the duration, and so you have a voice, and you should.
I mean, if there's any lesson in any of this, I think the takeaway from that is, if you are the parent of a child who in New York State has an IEP, an individualized education plan, be engaged. You are the advocate who is best positioned to represent your child's needs in those meetings, and love your kid. That seems like a good takeaway. Hopes for the future.
Well, he will tell you that he's going to go to college, and so that will be our next exciting adventure, and that's going to be a process. He is taking a couple classes this year, his senior year, that are college credit classes, which is interesting for presenting a few challenges and
They're
being
harder
a preview.
classes.
They're harder.
Yeah.
They're moving faster. The pace is faster, and so already there's okay, well, all right, this is what's coming. Which I think is ultimately a good thing. To get a little sampling of that. And I think that what we've talked about is easing into college, because I do think that there will be adjustments. It's going to, the support services work differently in college than they do in high school. So rather than sort of dive off the deep end, into the deep end with that, I would, the thought is,
Easy.
let's ease into that.
Give him
Let's
his
see
best
how it
shot.
goes and see. Yeah.
That's success.
Yeah. But
and let him show us.
Yeah, that's it. He's always,
As we have always done.
Very often has risen to the occasion, and can persevere and is diligent and persistent, and
We will see the future. We don't know the future yet. What he wants to do is start a YouTube channel. So I think inevitably I will have to have a conversation with him in front of you, and then we will crowdsource guidance. When I do a conversation with Dashiell, we will introduce what he wants to call the name of his channel. He wants to call it, and I'm sorry to ruin the surprise, but it perhaps is negotiable, Inspur Ninja, because he wants it to be inspirational and he likes ninjas. So we will explore that idea further and reach out to figure out how we're going to do some market research, some crowd research to figure out if Inspur Ninja is really going to drive the views and make you smash that like button. But essentially, we're caught up. We're up to today in the experience of having this kid. You didn't get all the details, but I hope you got enough to like the story. Bye for now.
Goodbye for now.